Welcome to another episode of the Driver's Alert Driving Safety Podcast, where we interview some of the most influential people in driving safety. Our guest today is Emma Gold-Utting. She is a customer success manager at FleetCarma, an award-winning clean tech information and technology company that is driving electric vehicle adoption within the fleet industry using an advanced cloud platform and specialized hardware. In fact, FleetCarma has been making such a dramatic impact in the fleet world that just this past summer, FleetCarma was acquired by Geotab, a global leader in the Internet of Things and connected transportation. And that is quite a meteoric rise for an organization founded just 11 years ago. Emma, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
We normally try to keep these interviews more driving safety focused, but I found this topic so fascinating that I think our audience will probably forgive us for just this one time if we get into more general fleet and transportation discussion. I think what you guys are doing is really impressive, and I think it's really topical in terms of just what's going on with this electric vehicle market today. So I appreciate taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity.
When we were doing some research for this interview, our producer had come across a few commercials that FleetCarma had produced last year, and one of them that caught my attention was, I think, really apropos in terms of what you guys are doing. And if you don't mind, I'd like to take a minute just to play that. I think it really sets the stage for the message and the theme behind what FleetCarma is doing.
Once upon a time, before you girls were born, no one had cell phones, and families had to share a single phone.
You mean like Mom could read my texts?
There was no texting. It was a landline.
Ew, gross.
What about selfies?
Well, you could take a selfie, but then you had to get it developed.
No!
It could take days. And scariest of all, instead of electric cars, we used to fill up our vehicles with gas that was made from animals that had been dead for millions of years and burned it to drive around.
Nice try, Dad.
That's not scary. That's just stupid.
I mean, that is incredibly funny and well done and very creative. I think the message, it says it all, right? I mean, that's where it's going. And, you know, the young generation today won't even know what gas engines really are, right? I mean, that's where it is.
Yeah, that's definitely what the aim of FleetCarma was. We were hoping to just drive electric vehicle adoption, and thanks to this Geotab acquisition, we have jumped ahead on that goal. So we're all very excited.
So, Emma, before we get too far into our discussion, would you mind helping our audience kind of understand just the general overview of FleetCarma, what the company does, and kind of what the vision is?
Yeah, so FleetCarma, as you mentioned, was founded 11 years ago. We started off doing consulting projects for OEMs to help them bring electric vehicles to market, and quickly transitioned actually into electric vehicle telematics. So electric vehicles, unlike conventional vehicles, though they have an OBD port, the electric information on that isn't standardized. So being able to understand how much your vehicles are charging, where they're charging, are very important things to a fleet manager, but a traditional telematics device is not able to do that. So FleetCarma saw this position that we could take in the market and used our expertise to reverse engineer these EVs to empower fleet managers to be able to monitor their EVs in the same manner that they would their conventional vehicles.
And just for the audience's benefit, because not everyone might understand, but I did bring an example. So this is a Go 8 Geotab device. So this, in a traditional vehicle, a gas-powered vehicle, this would plug in, like you said, into the OBD2 port. And then that would monitor, safety issues such as, it's got an accelerometer inside, so it would monitor, of course, speeding and aggressive driving, braking, cornering, and also, like you said, diagnostic information such as, how far the vehicle's traveled, where is it, geofencing locations that maybe your manager might not want a driver to go, or just be alerted when they're in a certain area. So And I think that technology is so fascinating, but it's interesting how I'd never really thought about how does that work in an electric vehicle. And now that fleets are adopting more and more of these, I think that's obviously that's where the industry is going.
Yeah, so we do have a super similar device to that plugs directly into the OBD on electric vehicles. And going forward, all of our technology is being put into the Geotab device as well. So there's a lot of opportunity for current fleets to expand their monitoring as well.
What kind of, generally speaking, what types of industries are open to this type of technology? What are you seeing right now?
The biggest push that we're having right now is actually in municipalities. A lot of municipalities, states, government organizations really have high carbon reduction mandates that they have to hit. So a lot of the time, they're able to switch over to electric vehicles and cut up to 27% of their CO2 emissions every year. So a lot of the time, that's where we're seeing that huge push. Of course, we are also seeing it in the traditional fleet space. A lot of sales people can switch over to EVs and save the company a little bit of money, and then utilities as well.
So I would imagine you're really looking at the fuel savings over the life of the vehicle. I think that's kind of the proof of concept in terms of looking at it in cost analysis. That's probably a big selling point if you're going with municipalities. You're targeting them, right?
Yes. Targeting is a very strong word, but we are definitely trying to position ourselves to be able to help them hit those mandates. So definitely in the fuel savings and maintenance savings is where you're going to see a lot of that overall reduction of fleet spend, which is awesome. The maintenance even goes further because you're not having to do oil changes and that sort of thing. Even your operational downtime on your EVs is less than if it was a conventional vehicle.
Generally, I mean, how large would you say the electric vehicle market is right now? I mean, do you have any numbers that could characterize what it is today and projections of where you think it might be in a few years?
Yeah, so the electric vehicle market continues to grow. I believe it's up to 3 or 4% in the US right now of all new sales. Of course, the Tesla Model 3 and the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid really help contribute to that this year. The Model 3 is, of course, a long-range battery electric vehicle that was available for anybody to purchase. The price point was a very good price point. And then the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid was the first all-wheel drive SUV that had an electric component. So there's really a lot of expansion happening in the market right now.
Are there any, what type of objections do you typically run into, though? Let's say if somebody's looking at, traditional gas-powered vehicles versus electric vehicles, is it just such a, like maybe for instance, it's just traditionally that's the way they've done it, so it's kind of hard for them to get into a different mindset to think about it a different way?
So that's definitely part of it. It is, electric fleet management is different in a few ways than traditional fleet management, but the biggest objections we get is often just that range anxiety. Nobody wants to, tell their drivers or get stranded themselves. So we really take care if we're recommending an electric vehicle that it's going to get you home 100% of the time.
That's important for sure.
Yeah.
What about just this idea as the electric vehicle market continues to grow, are we going to run into power generation capacity issues, and are there bigger plans in place that you might be aware of for utility companies to somehow accommodate that so that there is availability of power?
Yeah, so the biggest place that we're going to be able to have these issues is actually on the local transformer level as opposed to a big generation level. And the good news about EVs is actually most of them are charging overnight. So in places that have high renewable energy sources, such as hydro electric energy or wind energy, EVs are actually coming on at a time where it's going to be able to take a lot of that surplus and use it, as opposed to the situation a lot of places are in now, where they're actually selling that electricity at a loss to non-renewable states during that time. So that's a huge positive. On the local level, utilities are in the midst of upgrading a lot of their technology. That is something that has been happening kind of over the last 10 years, and I know they have a lot of plans to do that in the future. Utilities are also looking at programs that help educate drivers on when to charge. So through FleetCarma, there is something called Smart Charge Rewards, where people are incentivized to charge at off-peak times. And then utilities are also heavily using time of use rates. So, you know, if you charge when you get home at 5 p.m., they might be charging you like 20, 30 cents per kilowatt hour. But if you just wait until midnight, you might be looking at 8 cents per kilowatt hour instead, which is a huge savings over the long term.
Wow, that just made me think of something. Is there, I wonder if there would even be like a device that would like a timer, for instance. So if you plug in a vehicle, but it didn't really start drawing power, like let's say until midnight or whatever, when that power became its cheapest, that would be an interesting concept.
Yeah, a lot of EVs are programmable, which is
Okay.
awesome. So you can definitely set it so you don't have to, you know, get out of bed in your pajamas at midnight and go in your car. So a lot of OEMs are starting to think about this and are trying to make it as easy as possible for the consumer.
Okay, that's very cool. What about reporting tools in general? I mean, what are some of the reporting tools that FleetCarma uses?
So the biggest reporting tools that we use and will be available in Geotab 2 are just tools and reports to do with energy consumption. So being able to monitor your efficiency as you're driving those vehicles, ensuring that they are getting charged every night, starting their days off at 100%, to really maximize that electric range of that vehicle that day. And then in addition to that, you really need to understand how much you're charging, because unlike a traditional gas vehicle where somebody may have that gas card or something like that, that attribution of cost becomes a little more difficult when it's just all on, you know, your one electricity bill at the end of the month. So being able to break it down by vehicle, how many kilowatt hours each one of them charged, is huge for understanding your operational cost of your fleet.
So you typically would have like a dashboard, for instance, and would that be customizable to some extent?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely going forward, fully customizable is our approach, because we understand depending on your electric vehicle fleet, you might have different priorities of what you want to be looking for. If you are a municipal fleet, there's a good chance the things you're wanting to look for are more that plug-in compliance. So everything is starting with 100% every day. Whereas if you're a delivery fleet, you might care a lot more about that efficiency. So making sure you're getting the highest number of kilometers per kilowatt hour of electricity used, so you're able to complete your routes and go further with those vehicles.
Okay, very good. The another product that I came across is the Eevee Suitability Assessments, and it looks like in general this tool kind of helps you look at the long range procurement plan in terms of, you know, multiple years and how that cost breaks out. So could you kind of cover a little bit about what that is and how that works?
Yeah, so the electric vehicle suitability assessment is also something we are moving over to the Geotab platform.
Mm-hmm.
So for this one, we're actually using your telematics data to be able to leverage a purchasing decision for you. So we're using that data, we're running it through the algorithms of how an electric vehicle would have completed those duty cycle requirements. And then we take all of that and check it for 3 things. So the first thing is range. As I mentioned before, we know as a fleet manager, you cannot go to your driver and tell him he's only getting home 87% of the days. So the very first thing we do is check that it's 100% range capable for the requirements that you need. So depending on that, it can eliminate quite a few different electric vehicle options just kind of right off the bat. And it can be your biggest determiner if you're going for a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle or a battery electric vehicle. The second thing we look at is that total cost of ownership savings. With bringing in this new technology, oftentimes your best bet for getting it into play and getting that funding for this is by showing it's going to save that budget long term. So we calculate the total cost of ownership of your electric vehicle versus if you were running a conventional vehicle for the next few years, and do the difference for you. So if it's range capable and saves you money and is a suitable size for replacement, we will recommend it for you. So that being said, if today you're driving around in kind of a Ford F-150, we're not going to recommend a Nissan Leaf for you. We appreciate you're probably driving around in that Ford F-150 for a reason. So we would try to find something comparable, such as the Mitsubishi Outlander, because it does have that towing capacity and that four-wheel drive. Or for that, we may recommend that you wait a year because Ford is coming out with their electric trucks.
The one I found really interesting was the vehicle research platform. So FleetCarma, they've made it possible for automotive researchers, engineers, OEMs, et cetera, to tap into this real-time data. Could you give us a few examples of how this might be applied in practice?
Yeah, so we've worked with a bunch of people trying to make their own electric vehicles, smaller OEMs. So we're able to actually help them kind of live troubleshoot and really improve their vehicles as they go. The other people that we've worked with this vehicle research platform is a lot of universities who are trying to study the different efficiencies in these electric vehicles themselves. So by giving them the power to really get down to the granular data of how electricity is moving around that vehicle and how it's being used in those driving cycles, they're able to accurately compare different consumer models of electric vehicles to determine which one is actually the most efficient.
Is any of this data being used to improve driving safety?
At this time, we do have a few different clients who are using that hard braking and hard acceleration score to be able to really, help their drivers improve. But the long-term goal would be, of course, to put all of our data with Geotab's data to really help continue driving home that driver safety message.
Now, we mentioned a little bit about reporting. So is this unique to FleetCarma? I mean, is this one of your differentiators? You're in the electric vehicle market. You were able to bring all this information together using a telematics device. I mean, is this a big differentiator? Are you the only guys doing this in this market? Or are there others out there?
This is our biggest differentiator. We have the largest amount of vehicle support that we are porting over to Geotab. And there aren't many people out there who can do this to the same level that we can.
Okay.
If at all.
And you mentioned before also the telematics device that you have. I mean, it's basically it looks just like this, right? Same thing, but it's able to do exactly just as people are familiar with telematics devices where they plug in the OBD2. Same thing, just a different type of vehicle.
Yes. Exact same otherwise. We purposely try to make it as simple as possible. So like Tab, it is just that plug and play.
So let's talk just a little bit about the Geotab relationship. So as I mentioned earlier, of course, you guys were acquired by Geotab. I think it was in the summer, correct? June?
In June.
What is the core competency you feel that FleetCarma brings to Geotab? What makes this relationship, synergistic, if you will?
The best thing that we do bring to the table is just our electric vehicle expertise. Geotab has, of course, been doing fantastic work in this area up until this point. But by bringing us on, we're really rounding out to bring them a full electric vehicle solution here.
Okay. We're getting close here to our allotted time, but I would like to touch a little bit more on driving safety. So, I mentioned all the data that FleetCarma's collected. And, you talked a little bit about what it's doing for driving safety. Do you have other ideas maybe in the future where you're going to be plugging in the business into that concept of how to improve driver safety?
The biggest thing for electric vehicles is the smoother your acceleration and smoother the braking, the better driving you're actually going to get out of your Eevee. So for a company who is really looking to drive home that efficiency and increase their electric range, like a delivery company or something like that, focusing on that smooth braking and smooth acceleration is actually going to be beneficial, not only for their driver safety, but for their efficiencies on those vehicles as well. So that's kind of where EVs and driver safety can go hand in hand, because we are, when you switch a driver over to an electric vehicle, you are encouraging them to be smoother, be kinder to that vehicle, and be more gentle on that brake.
That's interesting too, because it's really very similar then to gas-powered vehicles, because we say the same thing. It just safer driving behavior leads to better vehicle performance, and in general, you just lower operation costs.
Yeah, it's surprising when you don't slam on the brakes. You don't need to replace them as often. So
Being in South Florida, I can't say we have the best drivers down here, and I see people accelerate into stops basically, and I was like, what? Why? What's the point?
yeah, it's definitely something we see up here in Canada too. We had our first snow yesterday, so we had multiple accidents on the way home, unfortunately. But definitely those smoother driving habits, leaving that space, is definitely always going to be better for that electric vehicle.
Well, that's great. So I guess really we're kind of run out of time here. Any additional comments you have that you'd like to get a point across about FleetCarma in terms of what it's doing, the future, driving safety, anything coming up on the horizon that's exciting?
Yeah, the biggest things coming up is, of course, just our Geotab integrations. Our entire team is working hard to get all these features into Geotab so the Eevee community can really start to leverage so much more data from the Geotab devices as well.
Okay, great. And also, Emma, how can people learn more about what FleetCarma is doing? You have a website, social media sites?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, of course, FleetCarma.com. That's the best place to stop and learn about us. We have a great blog on there that has a whole bunch of electric vehicle topics, from EV sales to actually just EV driving tips. So I definitely encourage everyone to stop by there.
Okay. Emma, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you sharing all that FleetCarma is doing, and it sounds really exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
You're on the forefront, I guess, of the future of fleets, and I hope we see more of this. So again, maybe we'll be able to do this again soon. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Once again, that was Emma Gold-Utting. She's the Customer Success Manager for FleetCarma, an information and technology company that is accelerating the adoption of EVs in the fleet space. To stay up to date on our latest podcast episodes, please follow the Drivers Alert Driving Safety podcast page. That's driversalert.com/driving-safety-podcast. And there you'll be able to sign up for episode notifications as well as browse our episode archives. And don't forget, the Driving Safety podcast that Drivers Alert produces is the podcast that features the most influential people in driving safety. Until next time, please drive safely.